You're listening to Life of the Record, classic albums told by the people who made them. My name is Dan Nordheim. Sunny Day Real Estate was initially formed by Dan Hoerner, Nate Mendel, and William Goldsmith in Seattle, Washington in 1992. When Mendel went on tour with another band, Goldsmith and Hoerner started playing with Goldsmith's old high school friend, Jeremy Enigk. Enigk took over lead singing duties from Hoerner, and when Mendel returned, they decided to continue as a four-piece. Despite having very little live experience as a band, they played a show in Seattle that Jonathan Poneman attended, and he immediately signed them to Sub Pop. They went on their first cross-country tour, landing in Chicago, where they recorded with producer Brad Wood at Idful Studios. Their debut album, Diary, was eventually released in 1994. In this episode, for the 30th anniversary, Jeremy Enigk, Dan Hoerner, and William Goldsmith reflect on how the album came together. This is The Making of Diary.
I am William Goldsmith, and I am the drummer and rust repairer of Sunny Day Real Estate.
I'm Dan Hoerner, and I'm the guitar player and sometimes backup singer of Sunny Day Real Estate.
My name is Jeremy Enigk, and I'm the singer, guitar player of Sunny Day Real Estate. I mean, absolutely. The entire record is inspired by a high school girlfriend that broke my heart daily. And I allowed it to happen. I need to take responsibility and credit for the fact that I just kept on going back, which also is like a lyric. And sometimes, although you hit me hard, I come back.
Mm.
And but that's love, I guess that's love or obsession or
Infatuation, I don't know.
I'm sure we all have love stories that hurt. And, especially coming from a young man. So that, it's a timeless subject.
When Jeremy says pitiful boy, it's like open heart surgery on stage in front of everyone. I mean, it's like just brutal.
It's a self-hatred for allowing yourself to let somebody do this to you, really.
Yeah.
And it is very like open heart surgery.
It's insane. When we play it tonight, I will be overcome from head to toe with chills on the pitiful boy bit, and I have been for 30 years. It's just fucking brutally visceral. It started with me and Nate in the basement of the house that we shared in Seattle, which is known as the Yellow House. And we were jamming for a while, and we liked what we were coming up with, and we wanted the best drummer in Seattle. And so we looked around until we went to a punk rock show and saw William, and we looked at each other and we said, that's the dude. And then Nate at the time was already kind of a big deal in Seattle based on some of the bands that he had been in, Diddley Squad and Christ on a Crutch. And so Nate just approached William and used his great fame to say, hey, buddy, you want to join our band? And the rest is history.
Actually, so I was living at this house that was like a few blocks away from them. And Dan and Nate had never really come over to that house, and all of a sudden they were coming over there all the time and hanging out. I was like, oh, that's totally like, okay, you know, like, and everybody else that lived there was like, this guy's never come over. And they're like, hey, you want to take a walk? So then we went for a walk, and they said, hey, do you want to play music? And I was already in 3 bands at the time. So I was like, okay, well, why not do a 4th? So we were instrumental for a long time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we wanted to have, you know, find a singer. And then just because it was impossible to find one, Dan stepped up and, you know, took control. But, and he did a great job.
I was just an absolute novice on the vocals, and I think it shows. I was passionate, but not particularly artful. And the first time that I heard Jeremy play, he was actually playing on acoustic and just sort of hanging around the scene. And I had seen him play, and it was just a stark realization of the difference between somebody who is really good at singing and me. And so
I wouldn't knock yourself that much, dude. You did a good job.
But it is amazing. Dan's vocals are great, especially if you go back and listen to it. It sounds awesome. But I was stoked because they had put out the 7-inch. I think it was just the Flatland Spider 7-inch. And I was like, I want to sing to that. Like, I want to do that. The music is so good. I think I can do that. Mm-hmm. So I put myself in there.
Yeah.
It was a real revelation when it all came together. To hear Jeremy's vocals over the top of what we were doing was, I don't know, it was just like a whole new world. It was incredible.
Nate went on tour with his other band, Christ on a Crutch. And when he did that, the 3 of us started an experiment with Dan on bass and wrote a bunch of songs. And then when Nate came back, we kind of presented it to him, and he was like, okay, yeah, let's do that.
We were conscious of the fact that we definitely didn't sound like what was kind of the mainstream popular music at the time, but we were also definitely conscious of our influences, and we considered ourselves to be like a punk band or a hardcore band, and just, I mean, Jeremy could do it all. He could do a scream that was as hardcore as anything out there, but also he just had these other incredible capabilities, and they just started to, you know, unfold over time as we were playing together. And it just became obvious that the best thing to do would be to just allow it to go wherever it was going to go and not really try and be any particular thing.
Yeah, just allow what was to come out, you know. But it was definitely more of it was like an experiment, you know, going from hardcore, more like, you know, storytelling as opposed to just protest.
It wasn't a grunge thing, but there was kind of a scene going on musically in the hardcore scene and in the underground, where there were a lot of people starting to tune down low to D, which is like really heavy expression of like post-hardcore. And that was kind of bubbling underneath the popular scene in Seattle. But I think the melodic aspect is something new that we were kind of experimenting with. Typically, there are bands like Chain of Strength, like these sort of emo, straight edge bands that were doing these really heavy riffs, but it was still screaming, singing. But I was bringing in like a more melodic thing to that.
Yeah. And I have to give credit to Greg Anderson from Sun O and Engine Kid. He's the guy that taught me how to tune my guitar all the way down and kind of showed me like how to be that heavy sound. There was definitely that grunge influence there, and then just, you know, crossed over with you know, more hardcore riffs and stuff. So, but I think we were also, from the very beginning, we were very experimental. I have a very clear memory of me and Nate in the basement in our early jams when it was just the 2 of us, and we would try things that were really ethereal and with very strange chords and long, you know, open spaces. And, you know, very early on, you know, we had a song called The Onlys that was like 2 minutes of just a bass riff with, you know, some vocals over the top. So just really sparse. And then, of course, the huge explosion of everything. So I think we were definitely experimenting with openness and silences.
Spaces.
Spaces. I mean, Fugazi has that insane, like 10-second long break at the beginning of that one song. I can't remember the name of it, but everybody knows the riff, and it just stops, and it's like so long, and then
waiting room.
Yeah, waiting room. It's just like, I mean, that was so influential. The idea of, oh my God, you can use empty space as this palpable, hard-hitting part of your music.
So there was a period of time where all ages shows were illegal in Seattle. So that kind of made things difficult. But we would go to like Spokane and Tri-Cities and play shows there because that was the only place we could, play a show. And Nate had roots in Tri-Cities. I remember we went and played a show in Spokane with Lungfish, and Jeremy opened up for us before he started playing with the band. And he just opened up solo acoustic. But and then Greg Anderson, again, was his band at the time. Engine Kid was going to play a show with a band called Skirt at the Crocodile, and they couldn't play, and so he recommended to Eric Soderstrom, the booking agent, that this band Sunny Day Real Estate, and this is when Jeremy had joined, play the show. So we played the show.
That was our very first show.
Yeah, that was our first show in Seattle, basically, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Or was that our very show?
As Sunny Day Real Estate as a four-piece.
As a four-piece. It really was. Wow, that's so crazy. Wow. Then he said, I'm going to do something. He said, I kind of want to do an experiment. I'm going to put you guys in the first slot for the Sub Pop showcase that's coming up, and just see what happens. And
the following day, so we just left our gear on stage.
Yeah.
He just said, come back tomorrow and play.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I totally forgot about that.
I remember it is that the band that was supposed to play that second show couldn't make it or something, but maybe it was too lucky nights in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not, maybe so. But yeah, it was definitely like Greg Anderson, they had to cancel for the first one. But yeah. So, and then Jonathan Poneman ended up being one of the one or two people in the room. And I'm sure Eric probably said, hey, go check this out.
Also, I feel like I have a really clear memory of Dave from Sub Pop, the long-haired dude.
Dave, Rich.
Yeah.
I think Rich was there.
Yeah. And I remember looking out at the audience during one of our songs, and Dave was so emotional. You could just see it on his face that he was like, oh my God. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think they were like the only people in the audience.
Yeah, they were the only ones.
It was like literally 3 or 4 people, but they were so stoked it made it like a good show for us.
Yeah, I was screaming at them.
Yeah.
I was trying to rip their souls out of their
heads,
out of them.
All right. I don't know.
Something.
But and then immediately after the set, Jonathan walked up to us and said, "Hey, do you guys want to make a record?" He just walked right up and asked that. And we laughed at first because we didn't really know how to process it. We were like, whoa. It was hard to sort of accept it as a reality initially.
Yeah, I think it's hard to overestimate how insanely powerful Sub Pop was at the time. How they just had such a command over the scene, and they were just the pinnacle. It was like the gods from Olympus coming down and saying, "Hey, you guys, we like your stuff." It was really insanely a powerful moment
and unexpected.
Yeah, very unexpected. Sub Pop loaned us a van.
They did.
I think they did because
that was the loaner. That wasn't our brown.
I don't think we had the brown one yet. I think we got the brown one after. I think it was a loaner van for that first tour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we got the brown one and we built this bed in the back and places to hide the weed.
Yeah.
We'll have to cut that part out.
Yeah,
my kids.
It's legal now.
The first tour that took us up to Recording Diary was a huge tour with so many stops and so many shows. And we basically, by the time we hit the studio, Diary was, most of it was just like muscle memory. And we were also just completely destroyed because it was so hard.
Yeah.
I think obviously Brad had done some incredibly killer stuff.
Liz Phair, Exile in Guyville had come out.
He did Hum. And
Had he done Smashing Pumpkins already, or was that after?
I think he had done something. He had a couple of credits that were like, oh my God, I can't believe we get to do something with this guy. And so we were just like, yes, please. That's all Sub Pop. That was Jonathan's idea.
It was funny though, because it actually didn't really make sense for like the music that we were doing.
No.
Having listened to Liz Phair, Exile in Guyville, it's a really raw kind of pop record, and we were a punk band and wanted to be recorded like a punk band, but he recorded us as he would like Liz Phair.
That's right.
And it worked.
It worked beautifully.
Yeah, 7 was the very first song that we actually wrote with Nate.
Yeah.
We were experimental, just a band just having fun together while Nate was on tour. We called ourselves Leave Steal Me a Peach. It was just the three of us, just a pastime. And we had written a bunch of great songs already. And then Nate approved me being in the band. And I was very inspired. I was in a room with Nate Mendel. I didn't really know Nate at all, so I was kind of intimidated. I'm in a band with somebody before I know them. So I was nervous, but I was just so excited. And 7, like, for me, it just came together right there. And that riff, I remember playing the E minor and the G. It was very simple. And Nate had said, that is so simple, but the coolest thing ever. And I was like, yes. And like all those songs just sort of wrote themselves.
Yeah.
Yes, we put in a lot of time. We would practice 6 hours, take a dinner break, and go back for another 3 or 4 until, we had to stop so we didn't piss off the neighbors.
And your fingers would just be like so insanely sore.
Yeah. I mean, but it really they came together very easy, but with hard work.
It was many, many hours of several hours staring at the ground trying to figure out how to end the story that we were trying to tell. But yeah, it was a long session of arranging.
My memory for me is that 7 is the one and only song that I've ever dreamed the riff that I had for the opening bit and the verse part was something that was ringing in my head in a dream, and I got up and did the and it's never happened to me before or since, but it did come to me that the little bit that I play came in a dream. So that's what happened for 7. The chorus of 7, which is kind of a hopeful, almost like forward-looking thing, and it felt to me like a culmination of everything that I had ever wanted for all the years prior, hoping to one day be in a great band and like just looking around and thinking like all these guys are like the best in their field, really, that I had ever encountered. And I couldn't believe that we were there together. And the chorus honestly felt like just like a backwards looking thing and also a forwards looking thing of, you'll taste it in time. And I felt like this was the moment that it all came together.
You taste it, you taste it.
Seven forever was way out in front of everybody because Seven was our first single and we had the first video and everybody knew Seven, you know, the iconic opening riff. So it wasn't until a considerable amount of time passed that In Circles caught up to it. And then I think they're neck and neck for a long while. And In Circles is probably considered to be our definitive, you know, number one song off that album.
Jeremy had it. Jeremy brought it to the table finished, and then we just adapted it to being more like a full band thing, you know. Jeremy brought it. It was a completed piece of work already.
I mean, almost. Initially, it was an acoustic song. Originally, I was going to be the first artist on Sunny Day's record label, One Day I Stopped Breathing, which I was very excited about. And In Circles was like one of the songs that I was excited to be like the thing. Mm-hmm. It was an acoustic song. It was very soulful and direct from the heart. And I recorded it for that. The entire song had been written except for the bridge. And I remember just playing it for you guys. And Dan just said, nah, that can't be solo. That has to be the band. Sorry. And I was like, but it's like a soft thing. And it's supposed to be really soft and sad. And then we go into the room and it's just William's drums like explosive and everything's distorted. I'm like, but but it was amazing. Beautiful song from Jeremy that he had recorded on a little boombox thing, and then of course, you know, we had to insert triumphant hugeness wherever we could, and luckily at that point I was still in a position where I felt like I really wanted to sing on every song, and probably like bulled my way into singing on a song where otherwise I probably wouldn't have. And so, you know, there's a pretty big chorus to In Circles that I think a lot of people can sing along with. That is kind of a special thing that just could only have happened in that time when it all coalesced. You know, I don't think today, if Jeremy brought a song like In Circles, I would dare to have the temerity to say, I'm also going to sing on this song. But back in the day, it just all came together. And I think it gives I think there's something there that a lot of people can sing along to. A lot of people can vibe with in the choruses. And then I also remember, Dan, you kind of being stumped. You're like, I don't really know what to do. Like, and I was like, well, I have this little part that it's just really just a rhythm in the background. It's supposed to be the background guitar line that's in the demo. And it goes, dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. And it's just supposed to flow. And Dan's like, oh, well, I'll try that. And he turns up his guitar to max and goes, nader, 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 nader. I was like, and it's like, was like a siren And then he's like, how about we start the song with that? He had like, I remember you had like an epiphany of starting this song like that. I'm watching this song being made and destroyed at the same time, but for the better. And that was my memory of In Circles.
I think that there's also, because of the tenderness and the quiet of Jeremy's version, that informed the entirety of Sunny Day's future. Because I always wanted to be like, when it's the quiet part, it has to be so quiet. It has to be so beautiful. Because I wanted to have those moments where we could capture the sweetness of Jeremy's quietness and the tenderness and the simplicity. And, I'll always remember be like, William, on this part, you have to play it so quiet. And that's always very difficult. But it informed our sound. And I think, again, for the better. Because we were able to seek that quiet, super intimate, super exposed, and then immediately launch into the stratosphere with everybody turned up to 11.
And then, of course, the song had been mostly written, but you were probably the one who was like, well, let's make it like substantially longer and add like a bridge. So.
Yeah, I was always the dude that needed a bridge because I felt like there's got to be that moment. And I think the bridge is so cool. And I miss the ding.
We need the ding.
I miss the ding, but the ding doesn't happen anymore.
It has something to do with the ride.
Oh, yeah. My aim is terrible. That's what it is.
This is actually a huge lesson for me early on in the band is, when I write songs by myself, I'm filling all this space with an acoustic guitar or a guitar. But I had to learn very quickly, and it's at the very beginning of Song About an Angel, that I'm not playing guitar at all because the drums is filling that space. Dan's guitar is filling that space and the bass. So I could lay out, and I did this a lot on Diary and in early Sunny Day, is play less and allow the band to fill that space because it just got too busy.
This was the first song that we wrote, right? When it was just the three of us and Nate was gone. So I think it was the first song that we had written as Thief Steal Me a Peach, that experiment. So.
And that really started as, I think we just wanted to play as a jam, just to have fun. And then very quickly we learned, oh, no, let's turn this into a song. Mm-hmm. Let's actually write a song. And Dan, again, you were like the ringleader there. You were like, no, let's write a song. And I was like, I just kind of want to jam, and just play. But we had formulated it to be a complete song that first practice. It wasn't even a practice. It was just friends getting together to have fun. And it became, a task very quick. And
I was on bass for that. And if you listen to the bass line, obviously Nate took it to a place where I shouldn't even talk about it, but I was the bass player for the song when we wrote it. And it just has 4 notes, and it's just an absolutely simple step down. And then there's a heavy bit in there, the words bit, where I was actually playing a bar chord on the bass like a guitar player. So like Jana, 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 that was all a bass line, actually. And then Jeremy was playing guitar and howling, and it was fucking cool. I loved it. I was very, very into it.
The U2 influence is so engraved in me that it's in everything that I did at that time.
Yeah, it's in his DNA.
Absolutely. And especially the passion, that Irish passion that I got from Bono and Sinead O'Connor as well, that are able to emote so much pain or joy. Especially Sinead was able to emote through singing anger and sweetness and softness, all of the emotions on the spectrum.
Yeah, if I was good enough to play Edge riffs exactly the way that Edge played them, I would have just done a U2 cover band, and Sunny Day never would have happened because I would have been perfectly happy to just play U2 songs. But of course, it's impossible to replicate the Edge's stuff because only he can do it. But the influence is just absolutely undeniable. And I never had a delay pedal, though, or the ability to use any of his incredible electronics. So I had to develop a picking style that would mimic the delay and the effects that he was doing, but just be, because I only had an amp and a volume pedal. I didn't have any effects. So I basically just, a lot of my style is trying to emulate the Edge's delays and his verbs and stuff just physically.
Can I add a wrinkle? I just remembered, I often forget about this. So they didn't have distortion pedals. They both had volume pedals, the exact same ones. And then they had coins that were taped to this exact right height too. So where they would step on them and go to the quiet part, and then they would just step on it, and like turn it up all the way for the loud part. So that was kind of our first sort of version of distortion pedals, kind of.
That's right.
And we used pennies, but I think nickels would have been better and more effective, but that was kind of a lot of money for us.
Nickels were way too much money.
Pennies were the most cost effective.
I remember, or quarters would have been the best of all.
Yeah, they had to use a lot of duct tape with pennies.
Yeah, duct tape and pennies just to get the right pullback.
Yeah, it was frustrating because they'd have to like kind of duct tape it down and then try it out, and it'd have to it wouldn't be right. So then they have to take duct tape off and then add a couple. It was a process.
Yeah, I don't know if I should say this, but like it was inspired by, for me, like those chords were like an R.E.M. song, like based off like an R.E.M. And one little moment that Michael Stipe does with these chords that are happening on, I think it's Hair Shirt from Green.
So I say.
Yeah, and it's one little moment that he does, and I just vocal melody wise made the entire verse that. And I think Peter Buck even was commenting on at one point, like, hey, that's an R.E.M. song.
Peter Buck has accused us of stealing multiple R.E.M. songs. To his credit, he's absolutely right. We'll get to it. No, we won't get to one in this. It's actually Rodeo Jones, even though we wrote Rodeo Jones about the same time. But there is a lick in Rodeo Jones that I do, and Peter Buck took me aside and he's like, you stole that lick from me. And I was like, yeah, bro, I totally did, because you're my favorite guitar player. Pete Buck also is the person I will credit for drastically changing our whole stage presence and our performance, because for the longest time, we would have Nate ring a harmonic on his bass, and then we would tune to his bass. And we would do this on stage, like full volume, and make people just listen to like brutally.
I remember.
Brutally.
And you would go, and then it was my turn.
Yes.
So it was 3 minutes each of tuning.
It was so bad.
When I found out about stage tuners, I was so upset.
Well, the story is that Pete took me aside, and we were sitting at the bar after one of our shows, and he's like, I'm going to change your life right now. What you got to do is get this thing called a stage tuner, and you step on it, and it silences your guitar because you're torturing everyone. So again, Pete Buck like literally taught Sunny Day how to tune our guitars on stage and not kill the show, like not kill the audience. So thanks, Pete. I mean, for everything. Thanks for like the riffs and for learning how to tune on stage.
Unfortunately, though, because I saw some footage from the last show we played before we broke up, like at the Black Cat in DC, and it's still going on. So we didn't implement the stage tuners until we got it back together.
I mean, it took a really long time because they're so expensive.
Well, there's that too.
And like
I remember like a rebellious, like, we don't need that. Like, we just need our guitars and our hearts and our souls.
I think also we had this thing where we really we'd be the headliner, and we would play like 5 or 6 songs. 6 songs back.
30 minutes usually.
Like, that was it.
We didn't want to bore people.
So we padded a lot of the set with just making people stand around and listen to us fuck around on stage till we were ready.
I have vague glimpses and memories, just quick flashes of writing that song, and I have no idea how we did it.
I think that it's undeniable that Round was heavily influenced by a Seattle band called Treepeople.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because of the licks and kind of the way that it's put together. Round was one that kind of we wrote, we got really good at it. We played it a lot on that first tour. We recorded it, and then we walked away from it for 30 years and never looked back and never played it again. I don't know. I mean, I love it now. I love playing it, but it was just kind of like, I don't know. There's some parts of the song that I think were just sort of like put in because we just needed to complete this whole thing. It's very busy. There's so much going on. I think we just felt like our songwriting demands that we have X number of parts and X number of changes, and we just sort of did it. And really, honestly, like, it really didn't seem like us that much. I think that's probably partly why we kind of walked away from it. But now I absolutely love it. And in this new album that we did with it, for me, it's kind of one of the standouts because it's so fun and it's fast and kind of power pop and sort of dorky.
Yeah, Around is fun. I mean, what I remember from it, and being a little bit worried about at the time, was the main riff, which is inspired by the Treepeople, is actually very similar to a riff from a song called Baby, You're a Rich Man on Magical Mystery Tour. And Dan and I were like, are we going to get in trouble for this? Because it's kind of close.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? And that's exactly the...
It's like, oops, but we're not big enough to ever really offend the Beatles.
Care. Yeah. Also, we added on the boom, 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 which was like
in a court of law.
Yeah.
That would be different.
Yeah. It wasn't an intentional swipe.
It was just different enough.
It was a subconscious swipe. Flashes of us working on it in the basement.
Well, you remember you wanted me to wear a cape and like have the wind blow on me.
For the Glenn Fry.
Yeah. You belong to the city.
But I think there's a good story. There's a good story behind 47, at least
it's
lyrically.
true.
Well, I mean, writing it, I don't really have a lot of memory of how it came about. But I do remember, playing one of our first shows at the Crocodile. And Peter Buck was like part owner of the Crocodile. So he was at a lot of our shows in those days and was a fan. And, here is a musical hero of all of ours. And he's at our shows. And the very first night that we play and I meet Peter Buck, and he wants to sit down and talk to us afterwards, after the show. And I am absolutely in love with this girl who I won't say her name. And she was behind him and he was talking to me. And I just kind of didn't really know he was and didn't really register because I was just focusing on her the entire time. And that is who the song is actually about. And I was like, I'm sorry, Peter, Mr. Buck, but I am in love and I can't. And then he was like, oh, of course. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Go write a song about it.
I mean, here I should be, in a conversation with a musical hero, but the beautiful woman always wins.
Love conquers all.
Yeah. So that must have been before we recorded it.
Oh, yeah. No, this 47 came later. 47 was like one of our last ones before Diary, I believe. And it kind of came together. I think it came together on that tour, really. Or maybe right before that tour.
So the mythology is as such. Like 7, 8, and 9 were the 7th, 8th, and 9th songs that we had written with since we had started with Jeremy. And then 47 and 48 were the 47th and 48th songs that we had written since we had started the entire project, even before Jeremy. So, but we ditched the other previous 46 songs. So that's the mythology. But, I think there's even more to some of the title than that. But that's pretty much the story behind them. Yeah. And also making the mistake of asking the drummer what we should call the song.
It's
studio creation.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think it came together in the studio.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing it in the basement. I remember specifically wanting to write a drum part that was sort of counterintuitive but still heavy, you know.
Yeah, I think the original riff that the song opens with, I think had been floating around for a good long while, but there's a lot of complexity to the song, especially in the chorus. Where Jeremy has just layer upon layer of vocals. And my memory is that it didn't all come together into a coalesced song until we were in the studio. But maybe I might be wrong. What's your memory?
It could be a mix of both.
I mean, you had come up with that original riff. I never really felt comfortable with a song. I didn't really know what to do vocally or even guitar. And so I just played simple chords. I just didn't connect to the song, but it was a great riff and it was a very powerful drum thing. And everybody, no, we have to figure this out, come up with vocals in the
studio,
just like Grindle as well. And I had written all of these sort of stream of consciousness words and lyrics. And I just went up to the mic and just put, my heart on my sleeve and just screamed all of this stuff in a sort of impromptu improv moment. And, to this day, I have a very difficult time singing it because it was singing at the absolute peak of my vocal range and screaming at the same time. So it just shreds my vocals. Mm-hmm. So over the years, I've wanted to opt out of ever playing this song live. And it's not a song that has a formulated melody. It's just all ripping out my soul in front of everybody. So it's always been very difficult for me, but it's on diary and it's there. It's been captured and I have to do it.
And I think that Blankets is a good example of Jeremy and I like honing in on some lyrics out of this like explosion of just kind of stream of consciousness stuff. Like we invented a Greek character named Astyaicles, that just like because it fit with what he was saying, and a lot of the lyrics for this song I think sort of formulated out of like it sounds like this, and
you drink like Astyaicles.
Yeah, drank like Astyaicles.
You said, did you say, do you drink like Astyaicles? And I was like, no. And then Astyaicles was created from that, which is a great Greek hero that he drank an ocean.
Yeah, he's a new one.
or drink an ocean of alcohol or something. I don't know.
He only exists in our minds. But
Astyaicles.
And then I do have to give, I'm not really hugely influenced or really particularly love the Smashing Pumpkins. I like the Smashing Pumpkins just fine, and I think they're great, and they were huge at the time. But I do have to give just a slight credit. There's a verse part where there's a droning guitar line that is very, very influenced by the Smashing Pumpkins. So there's just a little guitar riff that I would say I definitely stole that from those guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got that heavy low droning D, and then it's coupled with a higher dissonant, actually A flat. Well, it wouldn't be A flat; it would be G. It would be F sharp. Actually, this weird combo that makes a particular sound. And if you listen to it in absentia of anything else, you'd go like, "Oh, that's definitely sounds like something from that first record."
I can't see the face
I would say that Jeremy is probably the greatest natural lyricist and just a poet of just like spontaneous beauty and just this flow that is, I mean, I just stand back in awe of it. And then I am a more cerebral and like the dude who will make like 6 pages of notes about one line. And so Jeremy would just do these incredible, just off the cuff sometimes from deep seated places of, you know, his own poetry. And then, you know, sometimes I would be like, what I hear you saying is this. And it might be like a word or two different. And we would sort of like hone in on like, oh, that's like an incredible phrase, you know? So I've always felt like in Sunny Day, I had the best and easiest job in the world was to like listen to this incredible poet just say these beautiful things and then just be like, you know, help sort of like land the plane, you know?
Yeah, like I would say things that I didn't find to be very profound at all. And then Dan, you would see it from a different perspective and add that one line or that word, and it would just open it up into like, holy shit, that's actually very profound. And it sounds like I'm really deep.
How will they know just where to find under this bridge I lie down? See how they run, catch butterfly, trip over words with gifts and
It's actually stemmed on a language that Jeremy and I used to sort of like use to speak, you know?
Yeah, it is pronounced Pheurton. That is the correct
Pheurton
pronunciation. But yeah, it was based, the title was based off just like a character or a language, a silly, just sort of language we used to speak to be funny. And we just thought it'd be really funny to name this little studio experiment Pheurton Skirto.
Yeah.
Well, Skirto is also like kind of a bastardization of a musical form.
Yeah.
It's like a Skirto, like, you know, like some kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So
That was never my intention.
But accidentally, though, it is kind of like that.
So it's like it's the weird. It's like this weird. Makes perfect sense to us at the time.
But yeah, it was just Pheurton was just a studio experiment. I was getting really into like 3/4 time whimsical song. You know, I think Tom Waits was a guy who was doing a lot of 3/4 like carnival-esque kind of circus things, and I was listening, of course, to the Beatles. Whatever record that was, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, has that sort of carnival-esque thing. And I was getting into that realm and just played the piano that was at Idful Music, Brad's studio in Chicago, and was just messing around with this little waltz.
And then you and Nate just all of a sudden started messing around.
And then Nate started playing bass to it, and we wrote this quick little cute little thing. And for me, it was an amazing departure for the record, because here we are like an indie band where we're writing these songs, but there was a depth to Sunny Day that we all knew about, but we hadn't really like revealed yet. And so putting Pheurton on the record was perfect because it just shows a different dimension of the band, that we're capable of doing other things, and we're influenced by other things that are outside of this indie thing. So it didn't really, for me, it was a departure from being pigeonholed into this one concept thing, and it showed a deeper dimension.
How will they learn just where to find, down on their knees holding hairpiece? See how they flock, 10 for some grapes, trip over words with
think lyrically, Pheurton is one of our greatest triumphs because it is a perfect encapsulation of what we were experiencing at the time. We were the darlings of the music industry in Seattle, and major labels were pursuing us like vultures, coming to every show, giving us treats beyond measure, showing us like the entrance to the Willy Wonka factory and promising us millions and pursuing us. And all we wanted to do was write and play music, preferably in our basement and preferably just with each other. And it was this juxtaposition of these desperate, hungry, seeking pursuers and us just like these kids not even knowing what was going on. But we were conscious enough of the experience that if you look lyrically at the song, it's an absolute takedown of these hungry devourers chasing young talent. And I think it's the perfect encapsulation of what it is to be kind of the thing of the moment and to be pursued by the machine that desperately wants to monetize and turn you into something. And the lyrics capture that just absolutely perfectly. And so I'm incredibly proud of the song for how aware it was at the time and how it still resonates to this day. I mean, it's just such a great way to look at it. And there's a lot of humor in it because Sunny Day is funny and we laugh all the time. And like, there's a lot of comedy in everything that we do. And Pheurton is full of comedy from the lyrics to the title, to the presentation. There's tons of inside jokes and you know, I'm not going to get too far into it, but there's a moment in there where Jeremy says 10 for some grapes. And it is like for us, there's so many layers to this one simple phrase. I'm just going to say that one little phrase, it references like this kind of out of touch, clueless A&R guy that was with us. And he was like, we were going to the store and he was like, give me something, give me a bag of grapes. And we were like, okay. And he's like, what do you need? $10? And to us at the time, it was hysterical because grapes were like 50 cents. And to give somebody $10 to get grapes is like, just so clueless and so like extravagant. And for us, it like at that moment, it was hilarious. And it's funny because, you know, years later, the incredible Arrested Development has this moment where the rich lady is like, get me a banana. How much could it cost? $10, you know? And like, I when I saw that line, I was like, oh my God, you know, we did that 10 years earlier with our thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think Pheurton is really like one of our greatest offerings.
And now grapes are $10.
In the shadows, buried in me lies a chance in the shadows, the name is unknown to me.
Again, I just have these flashes in the basement, you know, again. So I know that you guys came up with that, the main beginning riff, right?
It sounds like Shadows would have started with Dan riff, and that I adapted my guitar around it. And it might have been like a very early discovery of how our guitars interact together, which informed what we did later on with these sort of like tinkly, magical things, how they complete each other's thoughts. And like one guitar line on its own is very cool, but it really doesn't define the beauty without the other guitar. And it sounds like from what I remember, Shadows would be like one of the first that we were starting to discover that magical connection.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there is a lot of experimentation with openness, and Shadows has a lot of open string business going on. I have a very clear memory of playing that riff, which is very simple on my part, and then Jeremy wove into my riff this incredible line that went 2 times around my part, if you know what I mean. Like, his musical thought was like twice as long as mine, but resolved
The phrase.
the phrase so perfectly. And I just remember Shadows is very much one of those moments where I was like, God, this connection, this 2 guitar connection is beyond magic.
When the shadows will near me, come that bright white. When the shadows wag the mountains, vultures don't look down. Trying this figure out, memorize their words for her.
It's also, like Round, another pop song. To me, Shadows is a pop song and not so much an indie thing that we were doing, which is fun. I love playing it every night because it is a pop song and I want to look at it as a pop song.
Yeah.
And I wish that it would have reached the pop charts.
It could have been a single if we would have kept working singles from the album, for sure. It was a contender for a single, and it has a big chorus that actually, I think, again, just is a great visualizer of William's genius on the drums, because it's unlike anything. Like, it's this pop song, this driving thing, and then it goes into these these breaks where William just kind of explodes, and like it turns into this complicated kind of flowing sort of series of silences. And
There's a punk rock approach to being orchestral. Like,
yeah, very much, very much. It's incredibly complex chorus, and also there's a bridge in there that's really like another complex melange of music.
No one can take away the fall short. Dreams over, lies the same by me.
That's what I remember about 48 is how just being able to connect with another person so viscerally on guitar, on like incredibly hard-hitting, powerful things, but like just being so in sync with someone else.
is this another one that you had really like worked on your own, right? That didn't you kind of bring this to the table?
I feel like this was a band
Really? Okay.
moment.
It's so fuzzy.
That opening riff of the down, 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 down,
Yeah, dance
stuff, yeah, down. That was definitely at least a kind of a cornerstone starting thing, and then Jeremy with this beautiful, very simplistic but kind of droning no thing just kind of added this layer of beauty to it, and then of course I think it just took off from there.
Try to disguise myself there inside.
This, to me, though, is one of those moments where Jeremy and I, there's this breakdown bit where we're both playing guitars at the same time and these really hard-hitting, staccato, jagged riffs. And just another example of these two musical like minds blending into like one seamless, incredibly hard-hitting thing.
Also, just to talk a little bit about the writing on that, I for me, like our little breakdown that we do with guitar is always is a moment that I feel inspired by Fugazi. With the way that Ian and Guy would, if I'm pronouncing that right,
Yes.
would do these octaves. And I think we were experimenting with how octave guitar lines would work with each other in harmony.
Play off of each other.
And it's one of my favorite parts of the set as well, when we have that connection, and the crowd always seems to enjoy it. It's a cool moment.
It's incredibly fun. It's got one of the greatest choruses we ever came up with.
Because early on, I had so much to prove to the world that I would every night self-destruct and sing and scream, and not really knowing that it would permanently damage my vocals. And so, I pushed it really, really hard. I had also quit smoking. And as your body is going through that healing process, it actually breaks down. And my vocals actually got worse for a period of time. And I had to rebuild them up. It took years. And I finally hit the peak at how it feels to be something on, where I had healed and kind of discovered a new way of singing. But they were pretty shredded, and it was pretty emotional for me to sing, especially a song like 48 was very difficult for me to sing. And I was in the vocal booth. I could not sing the song. I didn't think I'd be able to pull it off. My voice wasn't doing what I had written. And Brad just stopped the music and just told me stories for like an hour as I just stood there in the booth. And then by the end of it, he had inspired me so much that I just screamed the chorus for 48 and got it out. And that's what we hear. And managed to do it. Thanks to Brad. That's a true producer, somebody that can inspire you.
I have always been drawn to trying to create feedback of, beautiful feedback, again, inspired by the Edge, to sort of like sing along with the song. And I think Grindle, this was one of the very first ones that kind of opened that door for me, which I've pretty much put it wherever I can on every album. But I think that it was like the perfect thing.
Dan, take the reins.
Well, obviously the passion and the emotion is entirely born from Jeremy's performance. There's no doubt this came together in the studio. Jeremy was in an incredibly dark place trying to make this work and I think failing for a while. I mean,
that's one way to say it.
yeah, just like, I mean, it's, again, you know,
He was searching and trying to find. That song's kind of ambiguous, as far as like it's difficult to figure out which way to go vocally. I think, right?
Well, it came together in the studio. It didn't exist until, we never played it live until we got in the studio. The opening riff I had for a good long while. There's a very simple guitar line that has a pretty nice circular flow to it. And of course, it's based on the book by John Gardner. There are lyrics that Jeremy honed in on that basically is a description of the internal monologue of the monster. And then he also threw in some incredibly creative lyrics that were born of this Greek phrase book that he had. But I'm not going to talk too much about Jeremy's aspect. I want to let him talk about that. I just want to say that, again, Fugazi, huge influence. There's a bit in there where they're very staccato, Fugazi-like guitar line. And it was a big song, big emotions. But, I think we need to let Jeremy sort of describe his process of how the vocals came to be, because the vocals make the song.
Well, initially for me, Grindle was another one of these songs like The Blankets Were the Stairs where I could not connect vocally to what was going on. It felt to me like a caricature of Sunny Day Real Estate. We were getting to a point where we were getting really good at writing Sunny Day Real Estate songs. And while it was awesome, there was something generic about it to me. And of course the guys were like, no, this is great. We're going to stick with it. You're going to come up with it in the studio. We believe in you. You're going to do it. It's going to be great. And I really just wanted to toss it aside with self-doubt. And I just remember being in the studio in another room and just sort of resisting the idea of working on it. But Dan, you were like, no, I'm going to try some stuff on it. And I was like, okay, cool. And then suddenly I hear something coming out of the other room that just sounds beautiful. And I don't know what it is. And I always think of this, of those old cartoons where there's a pie in the window and you can see the set. And then Popeye or whoever floats toward the pie. That was the music. It just drew me into the room like a cartoon pie. And
that's a good one.
And I walk into the room and Dan was creating this feedback in harmony with the music that was singing to the music, and it just opened up the floodgates of the song for me. And I didn't know that it was possible to do something like that with drones. It's the first time that melodic drones, it taught me a powerful lesson that you could sweeten a song with melodic drones. And it was so beautiful. And then suddenly at that point, it was about going in and just exploding all of these ideas. I still didn't have a formulated or time to formulate a melody. So I just sang melody after melody. Brad recorded all of it. And then he had the bright idea of, well, let's just grab all the best parts and throw a crazy effect on there and just have them all at once. Mm-hmm. And so the song became a recording in the studio project, much more than us actually working at the vocals in a jam space, which actually created a whole new dimension of what Sunny Day was capable of doing, where we could now be a recording band and not just an indie band. And also there's this idea of doing this impromptu improv thing, inspired by Elvis Presley in America from an album called Unforgettable Fire by U2, where Bono is doing I believe Latin or maybe Irish he's singing in a different language and he's just kind of feeling it. And I always connected Grindle to that song.
And the last thing I'll say is that I think some of the vocals were even finished in Seattle, if I remember correctly.
At Animals?
Maybe, because I remember, and this is very sketchy memory, but I remember Jeremy like in a totally black room, huddled with like a mic, like broken in a corner. Literally.
These descriptions of me sound really dark and sad.
But it was like a dark and sad thing. I mean, you were just trying so hard and I remember like Brad was at the thing and I tried to say something to him and he was like, shut up. You know, if you're going to be here, don't say anything. And Jeremy is like in the dark. And
like Gollum. I was like
no, like a guy struggling to find something, you know. And anyway, I mean, to me it was so emotional, and that the emotion that's in Grindle is a real emotion. There's no artifice to it. The absolute pain, there's a scream in there that kind of sounds like somebody being killed. That's all real. That's all like actual emotion from Jeremy. Nobody got killed, but like there's a realness to Grindle that is born from how hard Jeremy tried to make it come into being. It was Sub Pop ultimately that helped craft the sequencing. And, you know, we obviously have had very passionate, very strong opinions about the flow of an album and where the ebbs need to be and where the triumphant ending needs to be. But Sub Pop, especially for Diary, was very instrumental in sort of helping us kind of craft the right presentation and they did other things too, like on some things where we would have maybe like an extra verse or an extra chorus or something. There's a couple of instances where Jonathan and Sub Pop would be like, you know, you guys like trim the fat a little bit. This might actually be better. Yeah. And then we'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But sometimes we'd push back and be like, no, this song needs to be 6 minutes long.
This is our art.
Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare you try and make it better?
How dare you take away our right to be redundant?
So it's credit to Sub Pop for helping shape the track listing, which I think is really, it's very solid. It works really well. Sometimes there's an ender. There's even like when we would play it like together, just alone, there's not a lot you can do afterwards.
We would end the set with it often.
It leaves me completely drained and totally wrung out.
Originally, that was another song that I had written and brought to the band with that lead riff. And I'd even played when I opened up for you guys.
Yeah.
Sometimes was one of like my...
That's true.
Like favorites to play. It was a lot faster. And I used to sing with a falsetto, if you remember.
Yeah.
And then bringing it to the band, we slowed it down. And to me now, it had more of like it has more of a Slint Spiderland sparseness to it.
Very much.
That the band brought to it. And yeah, just another broken-hearted love song, slowed down and altered by the band.
Yeah. All the pain was authentic. There was no fabricated emotions, that's for sure. You know. Yeah.
Sometimes a song that can make me ugly cry listening to it, just pure streams of tears running down my face. And
I think recently, Dan, when we were re-recording it for the new 30th anniversary thing, when I was doing the vocals, I think there was an emotional reaction in the room too.
Yes.
Because it is a true emotion.
Yeah. Jeremy did one pass through, and like right about 3/4 of the way through, I had to leave and go because I just started bawling, and I had to like go be in the bathroom. I couldn't even I could hear it through the walls, and I just had to get away from it because I was crying so hard. There's a little twinkly riff that I do in there that is just one of those bolt from the blue moments that like I couldn't write if I had to. Like you put a gun to my head and said, do this, but it just like happened. And I think it's one of the most beautiful moments that I've ever just like accidentally lucked into in my life.
Every record that I've ever been a part of, I don't want to listen to it mixed ever again. I am so done with listening over and over and over again that I usually, am out of the picture by the mix. That's my personal thing, is I've heard it too many times. So let's trust somebody else.
I would listen to Diary like maybe 5 or 6 hours in a row and just have the hairs raise on my arms and the back of my neck and be blown away that I was a part of it. And I thought that it was, a masterpiece, and I have loved it ever since the very first time I heard it, the final product.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always amazed at the sort of like creating something from nothing, like air sculpture, and how songs come into being. There's a mysterious element, there's definitely a conscious effort, but then there's also other elements that are like mysterious to me. But in time, I kind of like, there's a lot of things that I would have liked to have done differently or improved upon or not been as nervous when I was a kid. We were all kids sort of, but it's a moment in time for sure.
We sort of had kind of a slow dissolution. I mean, we knew that we were going to break up for quite a while, but we still worked together. And I think that, there was just so much love there, but also so much pain. I mean, it's just young. We're so young.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for people, even mature, fully formed people, to get along and to overcome problems and to be able to ameliorate your own personality defects so that you can get along with other people. I think that it's inevitable that young people will tear themselves apart, especially when the project is, okay, let's examine the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves and let's like write art about that.
Yeah, and then have to do it over and over
I'm
again.
amazed that we stayed together. The first tour that took us up to recording Diary was a brutal. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. to put people through that. We had no idea. We had no idea what we were doing and what we were getting into. And all I can say is that the love between us has proven itself. We're here 30 years later with a whole discography beyond Diary of incredible art and incredible friendship. And, you know, Jeremy said the other day, we've never broken up. We just have had to take some time to like collect ourselves in between things, sometimes a decade. But it's absolutely true. In my heart, you know, I never felt like Sunny Day broke up. I always felt like, you know, there was a moment when we would come back together once we all could.
Yeah, I mean, Diary, I'm absolutely proud of it. It has given me so much. I never expected it to be what it is. And all I can say is that I'm proud of it because 30 years later, we're able to play these shows and have sold out shows, have people show up, sing along. It was really just an expression to bring chaos into order for me, my own emotional chaos, to sort of bring that into order. And here we are 30 years later being able to continue to play it.
Yeah. I mean, Sunny Day always managed to honestly document the human experience musically. So that's something I've always been very proud of.
Visit lifeoftherecord.com for more information about Sunny Day Real Estate. You'll also find a full transcript of this episode and a link to purchase Diary. Instrumental music by Feverchild. Thanks for listening.